Chapter 11. Annika walked into the grand jury room, more than willing to be a witness. 12 curious faces stared into her confident one. She took her seat and folded her hands on the table. After the 4 persons swore her in, the district attorney gave her a professional smile. "Would you please state your name and date of birth for the grand jury, please?" She leaned forward, letting the microphone catch her voice, answering their questions. It wasn't long before she heard they had voted true bill. The case was approved to go to trial. Annika walked out of there with a bounce in her step and a song in her heart. The reality of it all had sunk in, and she couldn't be happier. Things were finally starting to go her way. Two weeks had passed since Maxwell's trial, and Annika and Cameron had been waiting and hoping that justice would be served. Annika kept her phone with her at all hours of the day, awaiting that much-anticipated phone call. When it happened, when Annika got the news that the jury had come to a verdict, she immediately called Cameron, bubbling over with excitement. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, how's it going?" "The jury reached a verdict!" she shouted into the phone. "Awesome! That is awesome," he said again. "When is it going to be?" 2:00 today." "Oh, I've got a lot of patients today. I don't think I'll be able to get off work in time." "Well, that's okay," she answered, breathless. "My Theo and Thea are still here in town, so I'll have someone with me." "Who?" "My uncle and aunt," she teased. "Uncle Isaac and Aunt Sylvia, remember? I gotta teach you some Spanish, boy." He laughed. "Okay, I'm down for that. Maybe after the verdict we could have pizza at my place to celebrate. I'm sure Dad would want to hear about it, and hey, maybe you could bring your Theo and Thea along." "Oh, I would, but they have to fly back home later this afternoon. Theo used up the last of his vacation days for this." "Oh, okay. Well, I'll let you know when I get off work and you can come on over." "All right, thanks. Please pray everything goes well," she said, surprising herself she had made that request. "I'll be praying." Just the sound of his voice calmed her nerves. "Don't worry," he said. "Everything's going to be fine, amiga." In the courtroom, Annika could hardly remain still in her seat. She had crossed and uncrossed her legs a dozen times. Once this was over, she wouldn't know what to do with herself. It had been her life for so long, but Annika was more than happy to be able to put it behind her. And no matter what she'd be doing now, whether more PI cases, managing the coffee shop, or another job on the side, she'd make sure it was with Cameron close by. Without him, she may never have finished. She didn't know how to begin to thank him. The prosecutor had done an excellent job of presenting the case 2 weeks ago. Everything had gone well. She felt good, yet just wanting to get it over with. The anticipation was killing her. She hoped after Maxwell was found guilty, his sentence would be life in prison with no chance of parole, or better yet, capital punishment. Life for life. Life for lives. Annika settled back down in her seat, folding her hands on her lap. Though in a seemingly relaxed position, her knuckles were white. Her aunt and uncle gave her an encouraging smile, covering her hands with theirs. It was so reassuring to have her family here with her, supporting her in this final moment, the closing of a long, hard chapter in her life. Almost over. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?" the judge asked. The 4 persons stood. "We have, Your Honor." "How do you find?" Annika held her breath. "We find the defendant." She closed her eyes, ready to jump up and cheer, scream to the rooftops that justice had been served. Not guilty. Annika's eyes opened in shock. What? Had she heard him right? The room slipped into chaos, half the room cheering, the other half protesting. "Defendant is released. Court is adjourned." The gavel slammed down. "Thank you, jury, for your service today." What kind of service is that? Annika launched to her feet, wanting to scream at the jury, anyone who could accept this blame. No, 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 she thought. You're letting a murderer go free. You've taken away 3 years of my life. How can you let him just walk away? Annika wanted, needed to voice her outrage, do something to change this flawed system, these flawed minds. But nothing would come. She couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. She was numb with shock and grief. Annika turned to see Maxwell hug his attorney, relieved. He looked as if he were about to leave, but paused. He glanced in her direction and then approached her. Annika stared at him through blurred vision, her jaw taut. Here was the man, no, monster, who had taken away her parents, had killed them in cold blood, and he stood here now, smirking down at her, free. She couldn't believe this. It couldn't be happening. Well, Annika, it seems we do have one thing in common after all. We both hate to lose, he sneered. That was it. Letting out a scream, Annika revved back and slapped him as hard as she could. She went for his face again, but felt arms wrap around her waist from behind. Annika, stop, her uncle was saying. That's not going to help. The defense attorney shouted, Bailiff, get her out of here! Maxwell glared at her, but then just shook his head and smirked. Annika allowed the bailiff to lead her out, her family following close behind. Now outside by her car, Annika stood with them, the silence thick and heavy. I'm so sorry, Annika, Uncle Isaac whispered, his arm around her aunt, who cried softly. I can't believe this, after so long. Wearily, he ran a hand down his face. We'll cancel our flight, spend a few days with you. He was going to say more, but Annika shook her head, eyes burning with unshed tears. No, it's okay, Theo. I don't want you to get in trouble at work or lose your job because of me. Besides, there's nothing we can do to change what happened. You shouldn't be alone right now, not after this. I'm going to see Cameron in a little bit, she said. Can we drive you to his place? No, it's okay. I can even ask him to pick me up. I'll be all right, really. When he consented, she swallowed, hoping she could say this without crying. Thank you for coming, for your support. Everything. Her lip quivered. It meant so much having you two here. Of course. We love you, Nika. They hugged her close. Annika felt her resolve waning, her throat on fire, but somehow she held on, burying her face in her uncle's shoulder. You let us know if you need anything, he said, pressing a kiss to her head. We're just a phone call or a plane trip away. Annika nodded, reluctantly releasing them. Get some rest, he told her softly. We'll call once we're home. Okay, have a safe flight. I love you. Love you too. After another hug, they slowly departed, footsteps laden with sorrow. Watching them go, Annika opened her car door and sat down. But she didn't start the engine, didn't put on her seatbelt or pull out her phone to see if Cameron had texted. For a full 10 minutes, she sat there, wishing this was just another one of her nightmares. Back at Crystal's apartment, Annika shut the door behind her and slid to the floor. She sat there, entire body trembling, her breathing ragged, waiting for the tears to come, but they remained lodged in her throat. It had all been for nothing. The murderer of Richard and Vanessa Vienta was free, able to enjoy the pleasures any fine citizen could have, while her parents lay in a grave. What a waste of time and energy and effort. If this whole journey had taught her anything, it was that the legal system was a joke. After all these years, it couldn't end like this. Her phone vibrated in her purse, and she pulled it out. It was Cameron, texting that he had gotten off work and everything was ready at his house. Oh, great. Now what? Annika knew she'd never be ready to share this news. But after everything they'd been through together, Cameron deserved an answer. And she needed to get this off her chest. She quickly changed into more comfortable clothes, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Annika wasn't in the mood to celebrate, but she wasn't in the mood to sit alone at home either. She needed to see Cameron. Taking a deep yet unsteady breath, Annika rang the doorbell to Cameron's home. She was sure her face would give it away. Cameron would open the door in a moment, ask what was wrong, and she would break down and cry. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe she should just go home and tell him everything through a text. The door opened. Too late. Hey, congratulations! Cameron's bright smile welcomed her. Come on in. The pizza just got here. Forcing her lips to lift, Annika stepped inside, her heart pounding. He led her to the dining room, telling her what kind of pizza he had ordered, and busying himself with grabbing glasses from the cupboard. Glancing her way, he then asked the dreaded question. So, how'd it go? Always so bright and positive, so innocent. She had felt the same way just that morning, and then reality nearly killed her for the second time. It didn't. He stopped moving altogether now, giving her his full attention. What do you mean? Her gaze locked onto his. I can't do this. Trembling, Annika hid her face behind her hands. Oh, Annika, what's wrong? Cameron touched her shoulder, and then the dam broke. All of the pain, anger, guilt, and sorrow poured out of her as she stood there, wishing she could disappear. But within a moment, she disappeared inside Cameron's embrace. He just held her. He didn't ask questions. The only time he spoke was to whisper words of comfort. It's okay. I'm here. No matter how hard she tried, Annika couldn't stop crying, couldn't catch a breath. She had held it back for so long, now she could do nothing but let the torrent of tears flow. Shh. Cameron slowly released her, saying, Here, why don't we sit down? Guiding her to the couch, he kept an arm around her shoulders as she went through another round of sobs. He remained silent, strong and solid, as he waited for her to gather herself. When she felt herself finally calming down, she said in a quivering voice, It's over. They let him go. More silence, now mixed with shock. She heard him sigh, but when he said nothing, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the day her parents died. Why did God let this happen? Cameron stayed in his position, holding her, but the next words out of his mouth were different than what she imagined they'd be. I don't know, but I'm so sorry, Annika. I know how much this meant to you. It meant a lot to me, too. Before she could form a response, Cameron's dad walked into the dining room. Come and get the food while I talk, guys, he said, not noticing her saddened state or choosing not to. No one likes cold pizza. Everyone likes cold pizza, Cameron said in a quiet voice. Annika brushed away the remaining tears. Despite everything she was feeling right now, she needed to be polite and eat with them. I'm going to go wash my face, she told him softly, rising. Okay, Cameron whispered, letting her fingers slip away from his. Heading for the bathroom, Annika realized he had been holding her hand the entire time they had been sitting there. She hadn't noticed until now when she had to let go. Safe in the restroom, she risked a glance at her reflection before dousing her face with cool water. Red eyes, blotchy cheeks. It all took her back to years ago, whenever she had been upset and her father would enter her room to try to make everything better. Annika? Dad opens the door a crack and peeks in. Can I come in? I nod and wipe my nose, huddled against the foot of my bed. He sits down next to me, one hand on my knee. What's wrong, honey? I still can't talk without crying, so I shake my head. Do you want me to just talk? Nod, sniffle. Okay. He wraps an arm around me and takes a deep breath, as if about to tell me his life story. So he just talks, about anything, everything, and nothing. But by the time he's finished, I'm calm enough to tell him what's bothering me, or what had been bothering me. Sometimes his quiet and steady voice alone is able to bring me out of the darkest moments. Kind of like Cameron. Now here she was, all grown up, yet feeling like a child again, needing to be held and told that everything would be okay. Maybe that was what friends were for, though. What family was for. Annika stayed there until she convinced herself she was okay. Most of the redness in her face had faded, so she forced herself to open the door. Cameron seemed to be waiting for her. Annika, if you want to go home, I understand. You don't have to stay. No, Cam, thank you, but it's all right. I left during dinner last time, and I don't want to do that again. I'm fine now, really. It was a lie, but she felt she should be able to get through a simple meal. And after all Cameron had done for her, she wanted to thank him by staying. To Annika's relief, Dr. Baines didn't ask about the verdict, nor did he question why she ate so little. She wondered if Cameron had told him what had happened, so he would avoid the subject. That would be a Cameron thing to do, always protecting her. Well, it's getting late, Annika said. I better get going. Thank you for dinner. Of course. Dr. Baines gave her a quick hug. Come back soon. I'll walk you out, Cameron offered. Annika felt the tightness in her chest alleviate as they walked toward her car. She had survived. Thanks for staying, Cameron said. Are you going to be okay? I mean, with Maxwell out on the loose, I don't... Oh, Cam. He's not going to try anything. He's not going to risk it after barely getting off. Her tone dropped to a hollow whisper. He won. Cameron's eyes shone with sympathy. Well, keep an eye out for now, just to be on the safe side. You want me to drive you home? No, I'll be fine. It's just a lot to take in. You know, my biggest fear was never finding the murderer, but actually finding him and then having it thrown back in my face was harder than anything I could have imagined. I never even really considered that happening. Well, Maxwell will get what's coming to him sooner or later. She nodded, wishing she could believe that. Thank you, Cameron, for everything. I never would have made it this far without you. I'm just sorry it was all for nothing. No, it wasn't all for nothing, he stated, his voice softening. We both know the truth. And everything we went through together, I think it bonded us, made us closer. She smiled. Yeah, it did. Cameron glanced downward, moistening his lips. Call me if you need anything, okay? And I mean that. Anything at all. Even if it's just a hug, I will gladly come. He shrugged, his voice taking on a more playful tone. Or if Steve brings you a dead rat you don't want to deal with, I can take care of that too. Annika heard herself laugh. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. How was it, in her lowest of lows, he could summon a laugh from her? Cameron had the perfect balance of being there for her, with compassion at his side, yet always keeping the jokes and lightness at the ready. Wrapping her arms around Cameron, she closed the gap between them and held on, as if she would never let go. Okay, that's the end of chapter 11. Thanks for watching, guys.